Welcome to this academic discussion on power in global politics. In the next few minutes, we will cover 5 key questions. That includes first, the concept and significance of power in global politics. Second, the different forms and dimensions of power. Third, power dynamics in global governance. Fourth, power asymmetry in global politics. And fifth, the relationship between power and sovereignty in the contemporary world. So let's begin. The first question which we are dealing with is the concept of power in global politics. We all know that power is a fundamental concept in international relations. It refers to the ability of a state or an actor to influence others and shape global outcomes. A very prominent scholar in global and international politics, namely Hans Mergenthau, who is a key thinker in political realism, defines power as the ability to control the actions of others through coercion, persuasion, or influence. Power can be seen in various aspects. Military strength, economic influence, diplomacy, cultural reach, and technological leadership are some of these aspects. Power determines a country's role in global politics, as we are all aware about it. Not only in determining country's role in global politics, it also determines a country's role in international negotiation and conflict. So we can say power determines a country's role in global politics, international negotiations, and conflicts. We have few examples here, and first example is that of the United States. The United States exercises power through its military dominance, and we call it as hard power. Economic policies and cultural influence, which can be included under soft power. So we can say that the United States exercises power through two modes. Or to say it in other words, the United States exercises power in hard and soft mode. Second example is of China. China's growing power is evident in its economic investments. For example, Belt and Road Initiative and technological advancements that include AI, cybersecurity, and 5G expansion. So, power is not static, but constantly evolving. And with this evolution, new actors and forces keep shaping international relations. So, we can say power is not static, but constantly evolving, with new actors and forces shaping international relations. So let's come to the second question now, that is forms and dimensions of power. Power operates in multiple dimensions, each playing a crucial role in global politics. So let's break them down. So there are at least 5 forms or dimensions of power that include hard power, as we have seen in the above example, soft power, economic power, political and diplomatic power, and technological and cyber power. So what are these forms? Let's take them one by one. Hard power is the use of military force and economic coercion to influence global events. For example, the US invasion of Iraq in 2003 was an assertion of military power. Another example of hard power is economic sanctions imposed on Russia after its invasion of Ukraine. Second dimension of form of power is soft power, which is the ability to shape global perceptions through culture, education, values, and diplomacy rather than force. For example, the influence of Hollywood, K-pop, and Bollywood in shaping global culture. And yet another example is the rise of international universities like Harvard, Oxford, and IITs as centers of global education. Third dimension of power is economic power, which is nothing but the control over trade, resources, and financial system. And examples include the dominance of the US dollar as a global reserve currency and China's economic influence through infrastructure projects in Africa and Asia, as we have seen above. Fourth dimension is political and diplomatic power, which is the ability to negotiate, form alliances, and set international norms. Example includes the role of the United Nations and G20 in global decision-making. Yet another example we have is that of India. India's diplomatic strategies in organizations like BRICS and QUAD. The last dimension which we are discussing here, technological and cyber power. That is the ability to dominate in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and digital surveillance. Examples include the US, China and Russia competing in cyber warfare and space exploration. So what we get here is that each of these forms interconnects, shaping global influence and diplomacy. Now let's move on to the next question that is concerned with power dynamics in global governance. We know that power does not exist in isolation. It shapes and is shaped by global governance institutions like the United Nations, World Bank, and International Monetary Fund. So how power dynamics operate with reference to global governance? Major world powers influence global institutions. For example, the UN Security Council is dominated by 5 permanent members called P5 that include US, UK, China, Russia, and France. And these P5 members exercise veto power to control global decisions. Second example of major powers influencing global institutions is the World Bank and IMF. These are often criticized for favoring Western economic models, and these are major tools of economic powers. Organizations like NATO, that is North Atlantic Treaty Organization, help powerful states assert military influence. So this is one way in which power dynamics happens in global governance. Example we can include here is the US withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement in 2017, and it has clearly demonstrated how a superpower's decision can disrupt global efforts. Yet another example is China's growing presence in the World Trade Organization. It is shifting the balance of economic decision making. Power dynamics in global governance reflect the struggles between dominant powers, emerging states, and marginalized nations. With this, let's move on to the next question, that is power asymmetry in global politics. This is also a reality that not all states possess equal power. The global political structure is characterized by power asymmetry, where stronger states dominate while weaker states find ways to navigate their position. How weaker states navigate power asymmetry? Let's take some examples one by one. First, through alliances and regional groupings. So countries join coalitions like BRICS, ASEAN, and African Union to strengthen their global voice. Second is diplomatic strategy. Weaker states use diplomacy to gain economic aid, military assistance, or trade agreements. Third, soft power utilization. Countries like South Korea and Japan use cultural and technological innovation to enhance their global standing. For example, Ukraine's reliance on Western alliances such as NATO and EU to counterbalance Russian military power. Yet another example is African nations negotiating better trade deals with China to prevent economic exploitation. So, power asymmetry challenges the idea of sovereign equality in global politics. By now, we are aware about this. The last segment in our today's discussion is power and sovereignty in the contemporary world. Let's recall that sovereignty refers to a nation's absolute control over its internal and external affairs. However, in today's globalized world, sovereignty is increasingly influenced by economic interdependence, international organizations, and digital technology. So how globalization is affecting sovereignty? For example, there is economic dependency. Countries rely on global trade and investments, which limit their ability to act independently. For example, the debt crisis in Sri Lanka due to excessive foreign loans. The second way in which globalization affects sovereignty is supranational organizations. Bodies like the European Union set laws that member states must follow. And example here is Brexit. That is UK's withdrawal from the EU. It was a reaction to concerns over sovereignty. We should remember that why the UK withdrew from the Brexit. It was concerned with the question of sovereignty. Third aspect is digital and cyber influence. Nations are vulnerable to cyber attacks, digital surveillance, and global tech regulations. This also somewhere affects sovereign status of nation states. For example, the influence of Google, Facebook, and Twitter in shaping public opinion and political decisions. It plays a huge role. Fourth is climate agreement and global health policies. Issues like climate change and pandemics, that is COVID-19, require cooperative global governance affecting national sovereignty. Alright, so while states still hold power, globalization has redefined the boundaries of sovereignty, making international cooperation essential. So before we conclude, let's have a look at the 5 things which we I have just covered. First was the concept of power in global politics, second, forms and dimensions of power, then we discussed power dynamics in global governance, and along with this we discussed power asymmetry and power and sovereignty in the contemporary world. So to conclude, we can say that power in global politics is multifaceted and operates through military, economic, diplomatic, cultural, and technological means. Here are some takeaways. First, power influences global institutions, shaping governance and decision making. Second, power asymmetry exists, but weaker nations use strategic alliances and diplomacy. Third, sovereignty is being redefined due to globalization, economic interdependence, and digital influence. So, understanding these dynamics is very important for analyzing international relations and global conflicts. That's it for today's discussion. Thank you for listening. Stay curious, keep learning.